Welcome back to the Hoosians. We have another Hoosians. We're talking Canada soccer and U.S. soccer. This video is super duper late, but long story short, there's been a lot going on as I've been sending out and heating out various messages of warning saying I've got a lot of stuff going on, but long story short, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it took me ages to finally get this video out, and I'm finally happy that I get some kind of opportunity to do that today, hopefully. But today, basically, this video finally we'll do the Canadian roster video, which, yes, they play the friendly in basically like 2 days. The 23rd against Qatar, and then the 27th against, I believe it is Uruguay. So both these friendlies are in Europe. I will show the details and the times from Canada soccer later on in the video after we break through the roster. But in short, this video took long enough and longer than expected to be produced, but here it is right here. And I had to do it before the game started being played at least. So, I mean, I guess that's a half win. But either way, nonetheless, we're here. Even though it's late, we're here. But this video, we're going to be going on, like as I said, the Canadian roster, which they called in for their last two World Cup World Cup friendlies before the World Cup itself. So this is the final chance to really solidify the Canada's roster if it hasn't been solidified enough, honestly. Because let's be real, I mean, how much changes is John Herdman really going to make after that great World Cup qualifying run and even the Nations League games? You know, because in short, it's been mostly the same people. Alphonso Davies, of course, if they don't get injured, Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Stefan Eustachio. It's been even Kamal Miller, Stephen Victoria, even Jonathan Osorio, Tajon Buchanan, Junior Hoyle. It's been Kyle Larin, even sometimes off the bench, Ike Ugbo and Ismail Kone. But it's been mostly the same starting 11. I mean, maybe with one or two tweaks in the back line or midfield, but for the most part, it's been the same for Canada for World Cup qualifiers, Nations League, other friendly games, and honestly, I don't expect them to be any different. So for these next two games and even the World Cup itself, I think that these next two games are really just gonna just solidify and really just highlight what Canada plans, or a good idea on where Canada and what they plan to play for the World Cup, who they plan to play. That's what these two games are basically about for Canada. Obviously, unlike the U.S. video I did, it's not going to go in depth because Canada, in my opinion, already has a lot of lockdown positions. There's nobody else that is really competing for other spots that are really as, I guess, as obvious as those in the U.S. lineup. But then again, Canada, as I said, they've already done a great job of just narrowing down who they're going to play, and even within that list, they've already basically done that again by deciding who's going to play and who's not. So between those who ride the pine and those who actually are on the field themselves, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Canada basically already narrowed down, and they already have a starting 11 basically for the World Cup, and they've done this long ago. So that's why I expect to really be from here on out, unless there's any significant injuries, I expect there to be very, very little changes in the Canada starting 11. Maybe other than one or two tweaks on the back, as I said, in the back line or the midfield. But for the most part, things can probably be exactly or pretty darn close to what they are now. So without further ado, I mean, I never did even read off the list of names, but let me go ahead and do that for you guys. So in our goalkeepers for this camp, it's Milan Borjan, Maxime Crepeau, Dane St. Clair. Out of those three, as I said, Milan Borjan most likely going to get the starting nod. I mean, yes, Dane St. Clair has been great. Yes, Maxime Crepeau for LAFC has been outstanding. But once again, Canada, I think John Herdman is going with consistency. If he's played Milan Borjan for every Canada game I've seen, basically, other than if not a throwaway game like against a small country or something like that, then yeah, it's going to be Milan Borjan who's going to be playing in the World Cup and get the starting nod. So yeah, and also just a quick note before I continue on, I won't be able to obviously do the FIFA breakdown roster of what I would play because FIFA doesn't have everybody's name besides Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David and a few other Canadians trickled in there. So unlike the American roster, unfortunately, FIFA has not updated any other Canadian names on here. But once again, as I said, really, really earlier on in the channel. It's a chance for Canada to go out and show the FIFA, in the World Cup, depending on how well they do, to maybe get their names on there, and then we can start having some more fun with the Canadian roster and stuff. But it is what it is. I mean, I'm not pissed about it or anything about it. I'm just because once again, as I said, Canada, unlike the U.S., pretty much has a set lineup, and everybody knows what Canada, a good idea on who's Canada going to play. It's not toss up like the U.S. So. Yeah, but I just have to get that off my chest, just in case those were wondering, where are you going to do another FIFA kind of roster breakdown like the US video? No, because one, FIFA does not have all the Canadian names in here, so I would be writing them myself. And two, even then, do we really need it? Because, I mean, there's a good idea on what everybody for them at this point already has a good idea on where John is going with this lineup and who's going to play, so. I'm not saying it's obvious, but it's kind of obvious. So take that as you will. But defenders, we have Sam Adekugbe, by the way, who was another starter I missed going down those little short names. Derek Cornelius, Alphonso Davies, Alistair Johnson, Scott Kennedy, Richie Larea, Kamal Miller, Stephen Victoria, and Joe Waterman. So as I said, for the most part, you can expect Alphonso Davies, Sam Adekugbe, maybe even Kamal Miller on the back line, and maybe even Scott Kennedy. As they say, Scott Kennedy, Kamal Miller, they can probably rotate with Stephen Victoria or Alistair Johnson or even Richie Larea on right back position. You know what I mean? So there could be some minimal changes there, but none of them really is significant that I would see. But other than just playing time, and honestly, Canada to an extent has a lot of these defenders. There's usually, when you make subs and substitutions in the game, there's usually a drop-off or a level of non-consistency between starters and people who ride the pine. But in this case, if there's a drop-off, it's very, very minimal or non-existent. So, honestly, but I still think, as I said, John Herdman's going to go with what he played with and what Canada rocked with in World Cup qualifiers and a little bit in Nations League, just because these guys, once again, it also helps with chemistry. These guys know each other. They've played numerous games together already, and why not continue? Why change it, in terms of World Cup? So that's my whole thing about this video. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think John Herdman's definitely going to go with that. If it worked in World Cup qualifying, obviously you might tweak it a little bit for Belgium, Croatia, and Morocco. But if it worked for the most part, the whole structure overall, if it worked for the if these group of names work for the World Cup qualifier, yes, you're gonna have to change tactics, and yes, you're gonna have to, obviously, as I said, you're not gonna play this. You're not gonna have to play the same way as you did in CONCACAF World Cup qualifying, but because it's CONCACAF is way different than a World Cup. But yes, in terms of the names on the roster, then yeah, I don't expect a lot of changes because once again, in terms of names, not tactics, names. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But then again, John Herdman, as I said, you can always make a few tweaks here and there, especially if there's no drop-off level for those coming off the bench. But, our midfielders now is Stephen Eustachio, Marth Anthony Kaye, Ismail Kone, Jonathan Osorio, and Samuel Piet. Samuel Piet is back in here as a midfielder. It'll probably be, Eustachio obviously can play center defensive mid role. Mark Anthony Kaye, you can see even in his list that Canada's super heavy on defenders. Midfielders, not so. Midfielders, not so much. And then you have Stephen Eustachio, who can play as a CDM. So you can definitely tell against, especially against Uruguay, you can expect Canada to play a really defensive-heavy game. And this is, I can't wait to see that because the U.S. We saw a glimpse of that with the U.S. And the U.S. fared pretty well. Yes, Uruguay almost won, but for the most, it was 0-0. The U.S. played fair. Both teams fared really well against each other. But Canada, this would definitely be a good test. And it's just going to test the Canadian defense against Belgium, Croatia, Morocco. Those are going to be some good attacking teams coming at you. But once again, the Uruguay game and even the Qatar game, that's just going to reinforce, playing World Cup type caliber opponents and reinforcing the defensive and midfield backlines and the Canadian tactics here. But other than that, Samuel Piet, I'm glad to see him in here. As I said, even then there could be a few tweaks on who makes the final plane to Qatar rather than who's left out. But For the most part, as I said, other than a few names here, I mean, I still got to go with the forward, but I honestly expect very little change, or at least what Canada rolled with, and as I said, World Qualifier would be on that plane in Qatar. So, very minimum to no changes I'm expecting, but hey, you never know with injuries or any other kind of situations. Sports, you never know. But lastly, our forwards, we have Charles Brim, Tajon Buchanan, by the way, he's a good ringer, Lucas Cavallini, Theo Cabana, which is a new name, but I think they might come off the bench. Jonathan David, Junior Hoylett, Luca Colosio is another name I think that's interesting, but might come off the bench. Kyle Larin, Leon Miller, and Ike Ugbo, who we all know is electric. And honestly, he could very well score a goal in this window. I mean, he could score against Qatar should he come off the bench, or even against Uruguay. We never know. But I do feel a goal is coming for him at some point. Ike Ugbo. I mean, they were back in the summer when he announced his commitment to Canada from doing national. There was just an enormous amount of buzz around this guy, and I feel like a goal is coming sooner or later, and it's coming very, very soon. So, Igbe Ugbo, it's coming very, very soon. I think that goal very well could come during this window. So, you just never know. We just got to keep an eye on him. But other than that, in terms of Igbe Ugbo, you do have your normal names, Kyle Aaron, Jonathan David, and you can also play Tajon Buchanan up there as well. So, you can play your three strong attacking there. And then you got interesting names here that can also come off as a sub, like Theo Cabano, Charles Brim, and as I said, Ike Ugbo. You got some interesting names to work with here, and depending what John Herdman does, I mean, as I said, I'm expecting him to play those three up top: Buchanan, David, and Buchanan, David, and I don't know. I'm drawing a blank here. Buchanan, David, and who's the other guy that plays? But I literally just said it. But okay. Those three up top, honestly, I expect to play. Maybe it's two, I'm not sure. But those three for sure. Anyway, I'm just repeating myself. But yeah, other than that, Canada's gonna go with whatever they rocked with in Nations League and World Cup. I think they're gonna do it again, or World Cup qualifying. I think they're gonna do no change or very, very minimal change here. So other than that, I mean, that's pretty much the breakdown of the Canadian roster. As I said, unfortunately, I cannot do a detailed FIFA what I would project to play that, but I would just basically just told you guys in words what it's going to be. Basically just minimum to no change from World Cup qualifiers and Nations League. If there is, then as I said, there's going to be one or two slight changes on either the defensive or midfield line. Maybe even one on the forward, depending on if you need an electric guy like Ike Ugbo to come in and change the pace of the game or match, then you can do that. Then Herdman might do that, but for the most part, I'm expecting Herdman, maybe like a lot of other people, to just rock with what we already have now. So, pretty much that's all I got to say for this video. I mean, it's late, as I said, but I did make a pretty decent summary or kind of description on what we can expect Canada to rock with coming up against Uruguay and Qatar. So, if you like this video, make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Also, remember to share. Hit this, obviously, hit the subscribe, hit the bell notification when late videos like this are uploaded, and tell your friends if it ain't broke, don't fix it.